Hey guys, welcome to Physioverse. I am Ria and this is the lecture series of Physioverse. So for this lecture series, we have selected the topic as motor learning. So one reason why you should watch this video or you should look forward to learning this topic is ये एग्जाम में आता है. This is a very important topic and it's asked in exams very often. It can be asked in your vivas or it can be asked in your theory also. In the same way, it is asked in your PG and UG as well. So it can be a 10 marker, 15 marker, 5 marker, any sort of question. So there's no running away from this topic. We as physiotherapists have to study this topic and understand this topic. So that's one good reason to watch this video. So another reason for you to actually pay attention or why we wanted to make this video and we want you all to learn motor learning is that it's a really important topic from a physiotherapy point of view. As physiotherapists, we deal very closely with this topic or we have to kind of apply this topic in our practice very often. So it makes sense that we understand what it is properly. So that being said, I feel like as a physiotherapist, we are very close to being teacher figures to our patients, right? It's almost like they are a student and we are the teacher. We're going to teach them what is right, what is wrong, like what is supposed to be avoided, what they're not supposed to do, what they're supposed to do. We make them practice how teachers make their students practice. We give them a little bit of homework. Once in a while, we test them, we kind of prepare them. And then again, as every teacher is different, every physiotherapist has a different approach, like how teachers have different approaches. In the same way, how every patient is different, how every student is different, the patients are also different. So again, we are bound to customize our exercises a little bit here and there for every patient. So in a lot of ways, we are very similar to being like teachers when we are teaching them how to get back to their life or how to get to their goals which they want to achieve. So for that, we kind of help them through exercises or strategies, tips or something of that sort that we give them. So if our field deals so closely with teaching, it makes sense that we understand what learning is, especially what motor learning is. So that is why it's a very important topic and we want to shed some light on it. Also, as therapists, while treating patients, once in a while we are in a little bit of dilemma that what we're doing, is it right, or should we change anything, should we increase the repetitions, or should we give them more breaks, or should we give them different kinds of exercises, or should we focus on one kind, should we give them feedback, no, not giving feedback, how that's going to affect the treatment. All that are questions that bother us once in a while. So motor learning is one topic that kind of sheds light on all this and helps us come up with a better plan or a rehabilitation plan for the patient. So for understanding all this better, for answering all these questions also, it's quite important that we understand what motor learning is. So let's go forward with understanding what learning is. So learning is described as the process of acquiring knowledge about the world. So learning can also be described as an act of acquiring new or modifying and reinforcing existing knowledge, behavior, skills, values or preferences which may lead to a potential change. So as the definition suggests, it is a way of acquiring some new knowledge, skill or any set of values, ideas which will lead to change, which may lead to potential change. So this was the general definition of learning. The definition of motor learning is going to be more concise and more directed towards learning any skilled activity or learning any movement. So motor learning is defined as a set of processes associated with practice or experience leading to relatively permanent changes in the capability of producing skilled action. So the definition is quite straightforward, where it tells you that it's a process which we learn through experience or practice which makes relatively permanent changes in our ability of producing any movement. So it can be like learning how to cycle or learning how to play an instrument, where again it's a process. You're not going to learn it immediately. You're going to go through that experience, you're going to do practice, and after that you're going to learn those activities so that it's a permanent like there's a permanent change in your behavior related to that. So let's proceed with the 4 concepts of motor learning. So the first one is learning is the process of acquiring the capability for skilled action. The second one is learning results from experience or practice. The third, learning instead of being measured directly is inferred from change in behavior. The fourth point is learning usually leads to permanent changes in behavior. So it can be like, to remember these points, you can remember as asking 4 questions and these points being the answers to those questions. The first question being, what is motor learning? So then the first point is the answer, where it is a process of acquiring the capability. Then second one is how does motor learning occur? So it occurs through experience or practice. So motor learning results from experience or practice. The third question can be, how do we know learning has happened? So the answer to it is, or how do we measure learning? So then the answer to that is, it cannot be measured directly. It is rather inferred from a change in behavior. And then the fourth one is again, what does it cause? So what does motor learning cause? So it causes a permanent change in your behavior. So that is one of the ways of remembering these 4 concepts of motor learning. So expanding the definition of motor learning or understanding motor learning a little better. So initially motor learning was only thought that it's just motor processes, but we've understood that it is a complex of perception, cognition and action processes. So all of this together comprises or helps us understand motor learning. Also initially motor learning was only confined to the individual, but now we know that motor learning depends on the individual's interaction with the environment and how they develop strategies to adapt to different environments, especially when we see it in terms of a patient where they are going through recovery of function, how they develop new strategies for dealing with the constraints due to their injury is also motor learning. So relating performance and learning. So previously motor learning was solely defined on the basis of motor outcomes, but this failed to explain why performance increased after practice, but it was not necessarily retained, which is a condition of learning. So what this point tells us that previously motor learning was only judged on the basis of a motor outcome, like you ask them to do a certain activity and you just observe that activity, and if it is improved, maybe motor learning has occurred. But then this failed to tell why after practice for a while the activity or the skill improved, but it was not retained. So but retaining or a permanent change in behavior actually is the quality of learning, is what defines learning. So this led to the notion that learning could not be only restricted to the performance, but it also it also depends on the transfer of task or retention. So this first initially that concept was just that the motor outcome or the motor outcome should improve, but then later it changed where learning should not only have an increase in the performance or improvement in performance, but there should also be retention of it and a transfer of task, which again led to the understanding that performance is a short-term change, but learning is a relatively long-term change in motor behavior. So then we have come to that sort of conclusion where motor learning is defined as a permanent change in behavior, and where we see performance as a short-term improvement in behavior in that skill or that activity. Example, we can so to understand this better, we can take an example of a stroke patient whom we are teaching how to hold a glass and drink water. So initially we will ask them to do a few repetitions. So maybe they are doing it 10 times and the 11th time they are able to do it properly, or like they do it till 7, and after that their performance increases. So that improvement cannot be called as motor learning. It can be an improvement or a betterment of their performance. It is not exactly motor learning. We can say motor learning has happened only when they come back the next day or they go home and they are still able to do the activity properly. So that means there is retention if they are able to do it the next day, and that also means that there's a transfer of task. Like when they are at home, they're using a different kind of glass with a different thickness, which is filled to another level, has a different texture. With that change also, if they're able to do that activity properly, then we can say that motor learning has occurred. One main video for you to watch this video In the same way, performance or their yeah. So here we are at the end of this video. We have seen the definition of motor learning, we've seen its concepts, we've seen how the concept has evolved, and we've seen the difference between motor learning and performance. So this is it for this video. Stay tuned for the next video, especially because in the next video we will be discussing the show Big Bang Theory. Yes, you heard me right. We are going to be talking about Big Bang Theory in the next video. I'm not lying. In the next video, we'll be seeing different types of memories and different types of learning. So one of these types has been incorporated in their show, and it's really interesting to see how they've used it. You will absolutely love this. Also, there are some really interesting posts which I found related to that, where a girl literally tricked someone into being happy around her using one of these types. So it's going to be really interesting to find out how they've done all this. So stay tuned for the next lecture. Till then, if this video has helped you in some way, please like this video, share it with your friends, comment if you agree with what I said earlier. Also, if you're not following us on Instagram or if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so, and thank you.